Hello, we're Crazy K and Batmeek, and this is the 5th video in our Reimagining Giants series. Today we're taking a look at Cloud Giants, the carefree sorcerers and high-stakes gamblers from the Forgotten Realms, and redesigning them to better fit within Therenor's endless skies, a silent world nearly isolated from the rest of the realm, where only the truly cunning can survive. Our goal by the end of this video is to showcase the deceitful world of Cloud Giant civilization, while also describing their subtle, powerful influence on the realm. Before we begin, I want to bring some attention to the unbelievable community developing on Therenor's Discord server. Over 300 D&D players, DMs, artists, writers, and world builders have joined since the server went live nearly a month ago, sharing their own art, tabletop stories, worlds, and speculations about Therenor. There's 4 days left in our art and writing contest, where server members draw or write about one of Therenor's unique races for a chance to win art by Lee and sets of dice by us. If you want to join in on the fun, the server link is in the description, and will also be pinned in the comments. Just as a reminder, if you like giant-themed world-building content, give the channel a like and a subscribe, and take a look at our other Reimagining Giants videos. So far we've covered Hill, Stone, Frost, and Fire Giants. All speed paints showcased in this video are done by Lee, and you can follow her on both Instagram and YouTube. In the Forgotten Realms, Cloud Giants are a jovial, carefree race, who saw the misfortunes of life as obstacles meant to be met with joy over sorrow. They stood at 24 feet tall and had milky white to light blue colored skin, with strong, attractive features. They wore expensive jewelry and clothing made of the finest materials, and would often forego armor entirely in exchange for trinkets enchanted with protection magic. Despite their easygoing nature, Cloud Giants often saw others as lesser beings, which results in a lack of empathy when their actions have dire consequences for those other than themselves. Cloud Giants were also adamant gamblers, enjoying the thrill of high-risk bets, often on events completely out of their control. Cloud Giant nobles hid their faces, choosing to wear exquisite masks to show their emotions. A large collection of masks designed to show niche and specific emotions was a sign of wealth among nobles, and some giants would shift through many of these masks throughout a single day. Cloud Giants had access to powerful magics, which allowed them to control the weather, summoning storms and rolling fog, or turning themselves into mist. Skilled strategists, they would utilize their innate magical abilities to their fullest, developing unified battle plans to combat threats. Cloud Giants live at the peaks of mountains, sometimes even residing at or on top of a layer of permanent cloud cover. In ages past, Cloud Giants used to live in floating castles, though the methods of making these flying cities have been lost to time when the kingdom of Astoria fell. Cloud Giants live in close family units, consisting of a mated pair, their offspring, and some close relatives. In times of distress, multiple families would band together to form one large clan. For Cloud Giants, wealth was their determining factor for their place in the Ordning, with lavish gifts and extravagant displays boosting their rankings. Additionally, Cloud Giants could gamble and make wagers with one another, even offering their place in the Ordning as a prize. Some of these wagers even involved the manipulation of lesser creatures, where giants would subtly interfere in external affairs to provoke certain outcomes. Overall, I feel the Forgotten Realms giants have plenty of great history to choose from, and I think a lot of this can be adjusted to better suit the realm of Therenor. Cloud Giants having a superiority complex is very interesting, and the concepts of giants meddling with small folk affairs for once is a pleasant change from Therenor's norm. The most notable aspect of Cloud Giants just might be their masks, and we would like to find how to incorporate this tradition in a way that made sense for Therenor. But before we can begin to talk about Therenor's Cloud Giants, let's look towards the endless skies and see what life is like miles high above the realm. Frigid, low in oxygen, and battered by constant torrential winds, living high in Therenor's upper skies would be an oppressive life for any land dweller. This region of Therenor is mostly bare, the occasional gargantuan scavenging avian riding jet streams as it soars impossibly high above the surface. However, bursts of life do occur this far above the world. Therenor's titan trees, massive arboreal behemoths home to the gnomish and elvish peoples of the realm grow upwards for miles. Their canopies pierce the clouds, spreading outwards in a branching mass of dense foliage. Trapping moisture from the clouds and heat within its branches, the oxygen output of the tree results in a humid, jungle-like environment, home to a plethora of giant insects, birds, and arboreal mammals. The elves, which have lived here for centuries, occupy the canopy, domesticating these insects for everyday life. The gnomes reside directly within the tree, burrowing through its roots, branches, and trunks, and using their innate magics to develop trinkets that further enhance life among the canopy for the elves, in exchange for their protection, of course. Gnomes and elves are not the only beings here. Permanent patches of clouds which house a new force float eerily close to the trees. Descending upon the canopy like a plague of locusts, the cloud giants. In Therenor, cloud giants are towering, predatory insectoids who claim dominion over the skies, their territory stretching for miles above the realm's vast, untamed regions. Standing at 25 feet tall, their skin is covered in a hard, chitinous shell, which gleams with a vibrant incandescence in the stratospheric sunlight. On their backs, 2 pairs of massive membranous wings enable them to hover among the clouds, and affixed to their jaws are a pair of sizable mandibles, used for grabbing and pinning their prey while they consume it. Their heads, void of any hair, are lined with spiracles, which intake air from the low oxygen environment, cycling it through their tracheal systems and exuding plumes of cirrus and cumulonimbus clouds. Of the giants in Therenor, their form is most similar to that of the small folk, maintaining relative body proportions and familiar facial features. A more recent evolutionary development used to invoke a sense of trust and ease. Cloud giants have adapted this look for more sinister reasons. Cloud giant society has developed to be cutthroat and opportunistic. Resources high amongst the clouds are scarce, and tight family units form out of necessity and general distrust for other members of their race. These family groups, called houses, nestle in opulent manor-like hives hidden deep within the clouds, shared by up to 30 individuals. Natural predators, cloud giants flaunt their innate magical abilities, using their skills to entice individuals, especially small folk, into their debt. They are fae-like in nature, their magical contracts helping to secure power for their dynasties and express superiority over other cloud giant families. Cloud giants are strictly carnivorous, descending from their manors to feed on the large insects local to the titan trees, whose branches scrape the clouds and reach into their domains. Cloud giants hunt by locating creatures in open clearings among the leaves, quickly advancing and snatching their target up. They then inject their prey with a neurotoxin from their stinger-like tongue, flying the paralyzed creature back to their nest to consume. They are not unknown to feed on mammalian creatures residing in the trees, making small folk a potential target in rare instances. During these descents, however, it's much more likely a cloud giant would target small folk for their dealings, offering wealth and protection or threatening violence and destruction in exchange for servitude. Cloud giants often quietly hold much power over notable names and political figures in the upper echelons of small folk society, and they can be cruel or even sadistic in the pursuit of power. Due to their close proximity, accusations of giant interference within the elven courts are frequent, and generally don't remain accusations for long. Twice a year, cloud giants undergo a molting process which leaves behind a translucent, pristine carapace. Freshly emerged from their shed, their form is tumultuous like a storm, their skin rolling like thunderclouds and their features continuously warping and distorting. During this crucial moment, the cloud giant is able to manipulate their features, using their mandibles to shape their figure and construct a new appearance for themselves. In this state, they are their most vulnerable, their squishy bodies using tremendous amounts of energy to take form. A cloud giant takes great care to undergo this process privately to ensure that attempts on their life are not taken during this time. Paranoid of assassins, cloud giants will go as far as to wear veils, previous sheds, and other garments to avoid drawing attention to the subtle paling of their skin by an adversary. Hours after their molt, their skin hardens and sets, and the cloud giant will assume this new form until their next shed. A new form allows the Cloud Giant to take on a new alias, opening them to a second chance to strike deals with those they were turned down by in the past. Cloud Giant Manors are exceedingly rare, obscured by the clouds and far out of reach of small folk. Those who have managed to witness these manors recall them sporting complex and winding architecture made from hard paper pulp, mud bricks, and stone. It is not uncommon for hedge mazes or twisting arcades to surround the manor, and a popular trick among Cloud Giants is to abandon small folk within these labyrinths, waiting until they are desperate enough to incur a Cloud Giant debt in exchange for being rescued. Mephits, sprites, elementals, and other magical creatures are often employed as servants in the manor, carrying out both menial jobs and serving as security, spies, poison testers, and scribes. Living an average of 400 years, Cloud Giant families compete heavily with one another, and will often make attempts to assassinate each other to expand their reach among the skies. Though they may act cordial to one another in the rare instances that they do come in contact, behind closed doors they are assuredly making extensive plans to usurp power, taking many precautions in their dealings. Families will have numerous children to ensure the continuity of their bloodline, and courting is notoriously difficult among Cloud Giants, as two families must engage in civil talks for extensive periods before eventually hosting the other for an evening in a rare convergence. These parties may involve viewings of contests and death matches among chosen small folk, massive, luxurious feasts, and other high-stakes games. Cloud Giant courting is arranged by the head of each house, the Queen, and a Cloud Giant union would be considered a success should the two families convene and no casualties occur. Interestingly, the inside of a Cloud Giant manor is empty, bare of any furniture, art, treasures, or trinkets within its paper walls. It is speculated that the purpose of this structure is solely to invoke a sense of wealth, nobility, and power within small folk. The true manor lies buried within the cloud. Giant tunnels hidden throughout the manor reveal a massive hive made of paper pulp harvested from the Titan trees. It is here the Cloud Giants hoard their immense wealth. Each hive contains dozens of winding tunnels and connecting chambers, with rooms dedicated to a number of purposes, such as sleeping, hoarding treasure, housing servants, feasting, negotiating, grooming, and child-rearing. Rooms and passageways are regularly demolished and rebuilt, keeping the inner halls of the hive an ever-changing mystery for invaders. The hive has multiple exits, which billow out plumes of clouds, and the humming of flying Cloud Giants traveling in and out of the hive are heard through all hours of the day. One giant, however, rarely leaves the hive. Located at the center of this massive maze of paper resides the house's matriarch, the Queen. Cloud Giant queens claim superiority over the other Cloud Giants in their hive, collectively known as drones. Living up to 1,500 years, she hides herself away deep within the chambers of her manor, commanding the rest of the house to further spread her influence from the inside. She maintains this control over her family through blood ties, magic contracts, and pheromone-doused clouds, which she exudes in abundance from the spiracles on her elongated head. These clouds seep out of the exits of her hive, enveloping the entire structure and the surrounding skies in a thick, obscuring fog. Any creatures entering or exiting the hive and its territory retains this pheromonic scent on their skin, which can be sensed by other Cloud Giants. Any members within her house who have been in contact with other hives without her permission are immediately suspicious in the eyes of the Queen. More often than not, picking up the scent of foreign pheromones is an indicator of a potential assassination plot. The manor's existence relies on the Queen, whose abundant cloud production propels the hive and keeps the massive pulp structure afloat. In her absence, the hive will sink as the fog dissipates, the magic which keeps it airborne beginning to wane. To prevent this, a new member of the house must take on the role of the Queen, or Cloud Giant from another house must infiltrate the hive and claim it for themselves. If a manor goes too long without a queen, it will enter a freefall, crashing to the realm below. Let's get a little bit into the design choices we made when creating the look for Cloud Giants. Our first iteration of the Cloud Giants was very simple, and was drawn before we decided to take each giant type in an animalistic direction. But we liked the uncanny look that she had, and we wanted to keep it. This led us to this idea that the cloud giants have adapted a more human-like appearance, so that they look familiar and trusting the small folk, increasing their odds of striking a deal. The titan trees in Therenor, which touch the clouds with their massive branches, provided a perfect opportunity for cloud giants and small folk contact. Given that much of the life in this region of Therenor are insects, it felt thematic to give cloud giants some insectoid mannerisms and features. The real challenge from this point forwards was finding a way to not make a pale, bald race with fangs look like a bunch of Nosferatu, and part of tackling this was through the clothing design. We kept the shapes organic and raw, and designed complex headwear which could stylishly change the direction that the clouds emerged from their heads. Some of the style influences were the Bene Gesserit from Dune, structures and damage made by insects, and even sci-fi streetwear. And that's our cloud giants. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss any more Therenor content, and join us over on the Discord. To end, we'll leave you with this narrative piece, recounting our researchers' experience living among a cloud giant hive. We hope to see you again when we cover storm giants, and I promise that's not the end. We have plenty more to talk about when it comes to Therenor. I remember the very day I received her letter. It was a silent, fog-covered afternoon. The air, thick with vapor, hung low in the sky, drifting lazily on the breeze. I found myself once again buried deep within the tomes of my study, eagerly absorbing the knowledge from a colleague's most recent findings. A thorough analysis on the social hierarchy within goblinoid cultures. With how prevalent goblins and their ilk are in Therenor, one would be surprised to find this is among the first dedicated literatures on the subject. Its surface simplicity a deterrence to the rich and complex world they live in. I felt a sense of nostalgia, recalling my days as a younger scholar in the muddy fields of the Great Expanse. My encounter with a hill giant, the lumbering, simplistic creature that it was, revealed a new realm among these rolling plains. In the brief moment we shared, that beast showed a rich blend of curiosity, restraint, and tenderness I didn't know possible. And if not this chance encounter, I never would have been the respected scholar I am today. Lost in reminiscence, I hadn't noticed the door to my study swing open, nor was I prepared for the overwhelming force that stormed in. My young apprentice, Ganthill Dalespring, quite the eager and most passionate student I might add, rushed a parcel to me, perhaps unaware of my surprise and her fervor. The package smelled heavy of musk and citron, addressed delicately in a gold-hued calligraphy pen and sealed with wax. I broke the bright orange stamp and retrieved the contents within. A letter, written in the same intentional script. The sender was Eris Bredy, an aged woman who resides in Taladrel, one of Therenor's titan trees. The letter, its words sweet and flowery like morning nectar, spoke at length of her admiration of my experiences among the giants. The details she recounted from my written travels were precise to a frightening degree, and interspersed within her compliments were a dozen more thought-provoking questions. She revealed herself to be of noble blood and an avid outdoors woman, having spent much of her youth observing giants, though an illness in recent years has left her bedridden. My tales brought her excitement in her old age, though one particular race managed to elude her: cloud giants. The final paragraph made her intentions clear. She was willing to sponsor my research, funding any and all materials I required, if I were to set out for Taladrel to commence research on cloud giants immediately. Inscribed at the bottom of the page were directions to her home, as well as a few lines written in an illustrious cipher. A quick decoding revealed the letter to double as a scroll of sending. I glanced over to Ganthill, who had been attempting to read my lips as I mumbled out the content of the letter to myself. Without hesitation, I confirmed my attendance through the spell. The letter combusted not a moment later. As the ash flittered onto my hand and desk, Ganthill and I shared a look of anticipation. I began packing my bags. The voyage to Taladrel, which took 3 weeks by carriage, was dull. The tree itself, though, was anything but. The colossal plant dwarfed every other living thing I've seen in my years. Hill giants in all their impressive girth were merely ant-like in comparison. I was careful not to disclose too much of this excitement to Gantil in my letters home, as she was quite disappointed that she could not join me on this trek. What I first mistook for hills upon closer inspection were exposed roots, and its trunk, a quarter-mile long at the base, maintained its width the entire length. The tree was topped with a sprawling canopy, half of which obscured by the clouds. Erispredi resides within Taladrell's crown, an insurmountable climb for someone like me. I'll need to enlist help from a local. Oaklespot, a gnomish village carved deep into one of Taladrell's exposed roots, offered me a viable and affordable solution: a 6-hour ride on the back of a dire beetle. I loaded my belongings into the side satchel which hung from one of the enormous insect's carapace, and we set off. My chauffeur, an older gnome named Nebilk, was much more of a conservationist than I would have liked, so when he suggested taking a brief reprieve halfway through our journey to acclimate to the lack of oxygen, I jumped at the opportunity for some silence. I took a brief walk to a clearing within the branches, taking the time to jot down my surroundings. As I scribbled, the faintest of hums faded in and out of earshot between gusts of powerful wind. I glanced back, but Nebilk and that dire beetle were nowhere to be found. Before my body could even tense from the feeling of uncertainty, it was upon me. A tight force gripped my torso, and in a burst of wind I found myself thousands of feet in the air, the pounding drone of wing beats hammering my eardrums. Glancing upwards, I was met with an intense gaze, its shiny brown mandibles brushing smoothly against my skin and hair. Its body jittered and moved in quick bursts as it soared through the open air, and it spoke to me in a shrill, commanding tone, just barely audible through the power of the jet stream it was riding. "It is you, Magus Bazagal. You are to come with me, now, in accordance with the wishes of my queen." I nodded silently, using most of my mental power to focus on breathing this high in the atmosphere. As we neared a patch of clouds, I could make out a grand beige spire which sat atop the cloud layer, along with a sprawling hedge maze which surrounded the estate, the vibrant leafage of the labyrinth stretching for acres. As me and my captor hovered overhead, I witnessed a few lost souls stuck in the hedges, scattered and wandering hopelessly as they sought the exit. We took a sharp turn, plunging through the clouds and revealing a massive hive, billows of bright white clouds pouring from its orifices. The entire structure seemed to hum in dissonance as it steadily soared through the clearing in the sky. The giant dove into one of the many dark tunnels on the side of the hive, the pungent, familiar odor invading my nostrils as we weaved through the winding corridors. Musk, citron, the same scents that lingered on the letter I had opened weeks ago. Before I could make sense of our direction, I was dropped into a large, central chamber. Dazzling elvish decorations and gnomish trinkets littered the cavern, obscured by a damp fog. Giant-sized furniture made of chewed paper pulp and dry clay were situated throughout the room. As I looked around, I barely caught a glimpse of a number of cloud giants situated in the many exit holes all around the dome, watching me closely, ready to strike if I made any wrong move. Through the fog, I could make out the gaunt silhouette of a giant, seated at an enormous table. I politely made myself known, kneeling and pardoning myself for the intrusion. There was no response. Then they quickly stood, their wings spread wide and buzzing intensely, blowing gusts of wind throughout the room. The force knocked me to the ground, and I watched as the fog cleared from the blast. When I looked up towards the silhouette once more, I was met with the intense gaze of 4 predatory eyes. In that moment, I felt as if all my secrets had been laid bare. Her massive paper collar mimicked that of a grub, giving her an air of youthfulness for an insect, and her crown directed plumes of clouds from her spiracles upwards, settling on the roof of the chamber and slowly filtering through the exit holes once more. "I have been greatly anticipating your arrival, Magus Bazagal." Her voice spoke with an intense sharpness, its high-pitched vibrations radiating through my chest. "Though I am not the least bit surprised you've traveled all this way for me." The giant continued, reintroducing herself as Queen Erispredi, matriarch of, in her words, the highest house in all of Therenor. She revealed she had read my published works and wanted her house to be the subject of my cloud giant research. My face must have shown the slightest air of doubt as she swiftly approached and circled me, dragging a meter-long fingernail gently across my shoulder blades. She reassured me that if bias was my concern, I would be free to try and find another house to visit, but I would be lucky if a drop of ink met my paper before I was dead. My scent has already sunk deep into your fragile skin. By coming here, you have gifted yourself to me. I understood in this moment that the matter was settled. A few weeks have passed since my arrival at the house. They have arranged a small chamber for me in the hive, round and undecorated. It has a distinct, earthy aroma. When I wish to leave, I may strike the wall thrice, and I am collected by a drone who promptly requests I blindfold myself before I am flown to other locations in the hive. The manor that sits atop on the outside, though beautifully crafted, is utterly empty, echoing with every step I take. Of course, I was to write about the ornate tapestries that lined every wall, the magnificent paintings, the rarities and splendors that simply didn't exist in this grand illusion they had created. Nonetheless, I continued on with my task, as a review by the Queen was arranged for the following morning. That day, I was flown to the Queen's chambers once more. As I read aloud the passages I had written all about the benevolence of her family, the luxurious gardens, the ornate and marvelous architecture, and of course, the grandeur of her majesty, I could hear the excited chittering of mandibles all around me through the mist. She folded her hands under her chin and smiled at me, her fangs glinting in the low light, praising me for the job I had done. An air elemental approached her with a scroll of some sort, catching her attention for a moment and breaking the intense atmosphere. She stood and turned away, motioning with a flick of the finger to one of her guardsmen. "You are free to go, young scholar. Our contract has been settled." I collected my things, and I was ushered once more through the clouds, back to another sprawling branch of Taladrel. Without a word, the drone released me and zipped away into the sky. I wiped the mist from my face and stood, laughing a bit to myself. Finally, after a few more weeks of travel, I stepped back through the doors of my tower, where I was met with a hopping Gantil. She urged me to tell all about my journey, and to that I asked her which version would she like to hear. As she sputtered, I told her to have patience and retreated to my office while the realities of my experience were still fresh in my mind. As I sat, I made note of that letter, the ashes collected in a small vial. I recalled the moment I cut it open, and how I felt knowing I had finally had the chance to see a cloud giant manor for myself. Though she tried to be discreet, the Queen's ego had outdone her, exposing her true nature to me the moment I read her full name. 2 copies of that sickeningly sweet dribble I had written in the sky were made, one to be sent to the Queen herself as proof of my commitment, and one to remain in my library as a keepsake. The true tales, however, would be published and distributed in cities throughout the realm. Reckless, perhaps, yes. I can only hope that should the copy ever make its way back into the skies, I am adeptly prepared to disappear, or that the text is simply too small for their prying eyes to read.